Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with California Ag Network, reporting to you from the annual convention of the Almond Alliance in Monterey. We've had a great lineup of speakers in the industry today. One of them, I'm standing with Rachael Spiegel, a food attorney, addressed growers, holders, and processors on the risks involved in farming and how to mitigate those risks of food recalls, foodborne illnesses, things that have led growers, holders, and processors to even serve jail time or other things, filing bankruptcy. There's huge risks involved, and there's some things that Rachael advised the audience today on what they can do to mitigate those risks and try to avoid some of those things from happening. So Rachael, can you tell us about those things?
No problem. So today I mainly focused on talking about the basics of the Food Safety Modernization Act and the risks that can be associated with either not complying or having a foodborne illness outbreak. And you're correct that a lot of growers can quickly go bankrupt in the event of a recall and a foodborne illness outbreak, whether it's due to listeria, salmonella, or E. coli. We're currently seeing a huge outbreak in E. coli 0157 right now in whole head romaine lettuce, and so there's going to be a lot of financial responsibility regarding paying off individuals that have become sickened through that outbreak. So I also talked about some different things that growers, manufacturers can do to be compliant, but also to mitigate risk. And one thing that's really important is to conduct your hazard analysis or your farm safety plan if you're under the produce safety rules, and really understand which portion of FSMA you need to be compliant with, whether it's the produce safety rules or whether it's the preventive control rules. And then once you do that, really assess the risks and the hazards that you have and what controls you have in place, whether it's dealing with pathogen issues of infield contamination regarding E. coli due to wild animals coming through your fields and implementing buffers, or whether it's due to aflatoxin issues with tree nuts, and what you're doing to test for those issues and paying attention to the growing conditions to make sure that aflatoxins are mitigated and that that's not a chemical hazard that you need to be aware of. And employee training and making sure that you have a culture of food safety within your organization. Make sure that you're training your field workers, your facility operators on food safety and why it's so important, and what they would need to do during a recall, or if an FDA inspector showed up at a facility, how they're supposed to interact with FDA. All of those things are really, really important, but really just implementing a culture of food safety is super important, because it may take time and energy now and be expensive. However, in the long run, it will pay off in the event of if you ever have to go through a recall, or to mitigate a recall so that a recall doesn't have to happen, because you have an excellent culture of food safety within your facility. And document. If it's not written down in a policy or procedure, then according to FDA, you're not doing it. So really implementing written policies and procedures is very, very important as part of your food safety plan or your farm safety plan.
Great. You mentioned also that those that haven't experienced recalls are the most at risk because they don't have any experience or preparations and such things.
Yeah, I mentioned during my speech that it's the clients that tell me that they've never had a food recall make me the most nervous, because they don't necessarily understand what some of their risk areas are or their pitfalls are. The real way to really analyze how your facility interacts and engages in a recall is by actually going through a recall. And so, not that I want any client to go through a recall, but it's also really helpful to do mock recalls and understand what you need to do in order to actually carry out a recall. And I recommend clients carry out 1 to 2 mock recalls a year, just so that they get their staff and employees in place and trained and understand how to carry out a recall, because recalls are really, really stressful when they happen. And so you want to make sure that the right decision making is happening when a recall does actually happen, and mock recalls are helpful for that.
Great. Well, thank you, Rachael. Read more about this as well as the other convention proceedings in Pacific Nut Producer Magazine, and let's limit these liabilities and risks. Do all we can so we can keep farming. I'm Matthew Malcolm, CaliforniaAgNet.com.